Okay, today I'll be talking about composite functions, which are functions inside of functions. So, first, a definition. If it says f of g of x, that means g is inside f. Alright, so we're plugging in the g function into the f function. So that's what it means. Plug in g into f. But they could ask you in different ways. So, say they give us two functions, f of x and g of x. And the first part said find, so part A, find f of g of x. Well, f of g of x means we're plugging in g into f. Alright, so we're taking our g function and we're plugging it into the f function. Meaning, we're taking x squared minus 1 and we're plugging it into the x in the f function. We're taking our g function and we're plugging it into the f function. So, f of g of x, because usually it's f of x. Now it's f of g of x. So it's just telling us to replace x with g of x. So we get 3 times our g function, x squared minus 1, minus 1. And then simplify it. So here we're just going to have to distribute, which gives us 3x squared. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, minus 1. And then last we would add like terms. So equals, finally, 3x squared minus 4. And that would be f of g of x. But it can also ask you, given these two things, to find g of f, which is the exact opposite of that. To find g of f, we're just taking our f function and plugging it into the g function. So instead, we're taking our entire f function and we're plugging it into the x here. And you have to make sure to use parentheses. Okay? So, g of f of x equals taking this, replacing it with the x here. So, we get 3x minus 1 squared minus 1. We know when we square something, really we're multiplying it by itself. 3x minus 1 times 3x minus 1. Minus 1 follows. So here we have to FOIL. 3x times 3x is 9x squared. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x. Negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And the minus 1 still follows. And then we just add like terms. So our final answer is 9x squared, because there's no other x squared terms. Then we have negative 3x minus 3x is negative 6x. And then the 1's cancel out. So our g of f of x is just 9x squared minus 6x. Alright, so another example, say we have g of x equals x squared plus x, and h of x is x minus 1. And say first it wants us to find g of h of x. So it's asking us to plug in h into the g. So we're going to have g of h of x. So we do that. We're plugging in our h function into all the x's in the g function. So not only are we replacing this x with x minus 1, but we're also replacing this x with x minus 1. So we can go ahead and do that. This is replacing both of these x's, so we get x minus 1 squared plus x minus 1. We have to FOIL that because when you square something, you multiply it by itself. You don't really need these parentheses because you're just distributing a positive 1, and that's not going to change anything. So we do need to FOIL this though. So we have x times x is x squared. And we have x times negative 1 is negative x. Negative 1 times x is negative x again. And then negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Plus x minus 1. Then we just add like terms. There's only one x squared, so that's going to stay. We have negative x minus x plus x. So that's negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2, plus 1 is negative 1x, or just negative x. And then we have positive 1 minus 1, those are going to cancel. So we just get x squared minus x. And that would be our g of h of x. Now if it said find g of h of 4, we would do the same thing, except in the end we'd have to plug in 4, because if g of h of x is x squared minus x, and it wants us to find g of h of 4, it just wants us to plug in 4 into the x's here. So since we know g of h of x is x squared minus x, then g of h of 4 is just going to be 4 squared minus 4. So that's going to become g of h of 4 is 4 squared, which is 16, minus 4, which is 12. So g of h of 4 is 12. Now there is another way of doing that, which I'm going to show you. So another way of doing g of h of 4, well, we know g of h of 4 is the same, we could write it the same by doing this, g of h of 4. We could find h of 4 first. H of 4 is just using this 4 minus 1. Alright, because all you do is replace the x with 4. Right? So we have 4 minus 1. So h of 4 is 3. And then we would take that and we would plug it into g. Because we're looking for g of h of 4. If h of 4 is 3, then we just plug that in. So g of 3 is going to give us our answer. Well, g of 3 means plug in all the x's for 3's. So we have 3 squared plus 3, which is 9 plus 3, which gives us 12. So another way of saying g of h of 4 is saying g of h of 4, where h of 4 is just plugging in 4 into the h of x, then you plug that into the g of x, and that will give you g of h of 4. Alright, and last example. Say it wanted us to find f of g of 5, given f of x is 4x plus 1, and g of x is the square root of x minus 1. So, we do the same thing. First, we would want to find f of g of x, which we know is just plugging in our g function into the f function. So we're taking this, and we're plugging it into the x here. So that's going to give us 4 times the square root of x minus 1. There's not really much we can do to simplify this, plus 1, because we're just replacing the x. Everything else is going to stay the same. It used to say 4x plus 1. Now it says 4 times our g function plus 1. And we're plugging in 5, because that's what it wants us to do. Because this is a 5, so to find f of g of 5, just plug in 5. 4 times the square root of 5 minus 1 plus 1. Do everything in the square root first. That's going to become the square root of 4. So we get 4 times the square root of 4. Well, we also know the square root of 4 is 2. So that's 4 times 2. plus 1. So we get 8 plus 1. So we know f of g of 5 is 9. And say it wants us to find g of f of 4. So first we have to find what g of f of x is. G of f of x is just plugging in our f function into the x's in the g function. So our f is just going to replace the x there. Everything else stays the same. The square root stays the same. The x becomes 4x plus 1. Now remember, if there's a number in front of the x, you're going to have to distribute it. Minus 1. So g of f, then you simplify what you can, of x is just the square root of, the 1's cancel, 1 minus 1 is 0, 4x. And then it wants us to find g of f of 4, so we're just going to plug in 4 into that. G of f of 4 is the square root of 4 times 4, which is the square root of 16, and we know the square root of 16 is 4. So g of f of 4 is 4. And that's all I have for today.